So yeah, I mean but this is the coolest thing. I'm a big cinematic rock fan and sci-fi nerd. So like I was saying like last night, this is like has the three pillars I love, which is like really heavy moments in rock music, orchestral music, and then electronic elements. So having like that trifecta is really important. This band is like the perfect playground to explore that world.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Benny Goodman, and I'm here with my compatriots Cory Juba and Siobhán Cronin. And this week we have the last member, we've collected them all, of Starset, the brand new to the band. He's not like a baby or anything, but his name's Cory Juba, and he's an incredible... I don't want to just call him a keyboard player and relegate him to that realm. You're just going to have to listen to all the multifaceted things that he does. What do you guys think about it?
Yeah. I mean, he's awesome. He's a multi-instrumentalist. He's got a great story about how he got involved in music, so definitely listen for that in here. Cool story about how he got into Starset. This is really kind of the full spectrum of his experiences in music and getting into where he is today. So
yeah, it really does feel like, with our powers combined, we have every member of Starset. I feel like we've reached some new plane of existence at this point.
That's right.
There's
like
nowhere
Pokemon.
else to go.
If I need to make another band, I know that I can just go back to this LinkedIn-like experience with all these Starset members and put together a super group.
That's right. So anyway, here we go. Part 1 with Cory Juba right now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 2020. I'm Siobhán Cronin here, as always, with my cohorts and my Lost Symphony bandmates, Benny Goodman and Cory Juba. And this week, I am super excited to finish the Starset. I don't even know what you call it when you get the 7th one. It's not the trilogy, but anyway, the final member of Starset who just joined, Cory Juba, my good friend now. It's been great to get to know you on the road and touring and playing shows, and I'm really excited that you are joining us finally on the podcast so that everyone can get to know you a little better.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
We were just talking before we started about how you spell your name correctly, and I appreciate that.
It's relieving, isn't it? Yeah.
I think we were saying people get too crazy with the spellings of Cory. There's K's and extra I's and E's.
Oh, K's. I haven't even heard that.
Just unnecessary. Keep it simple.
Do you have people mispronounce your last name a lot, Cory?
Yeah, probably once a day.
I hope I didn't just mispronounce it. I guess I never officially asked you how you say it.
It's Juba.
Okay. What do people say? Juba?
I get the Juba a lot. I get a Yuba. Juba, I get that. I've heard that quite a bit. Yeah.
Juba.
I asked that because I called Cory Cory Paza for the first, I think 12 years that I knew him. So considering you both have names, Cory, spelled C-O-R-Y, and then four-letter last names that people could easily mispronounce for long periods of time, I feel like you guys have a lot in common.
We're kindred spirits right here.
Yes. 8 letters, it captures everything. I have a small signature though, which is nice, especially when there's.
What are you talking? Your signature is growing by the day. We're on an acoustic tour right now for anyone that's watching, and part of the second half of our show time is we go around and talk to all the fans, which has been really fun. But I'm always seeing how people's signatures are taking up more and more real estate on whatever piece of clothing or flag or whatever. And by the time they get around to me, I'm like, oh, okay, Cory is now the main signature on this page.
I think I'm the only person in the band who actually writes out their name. Everyone else does like an S and a squiggle, or Brock will do like the B squiggle. Some people don't even.
That's because you're the least famous person in the band.
Yeah.
No, but I think it's because you have the perfect number of letters. I think it's convenient for you to do your whole name. For me, if I had to do the whole thing, it's just a huge pain.
Yeah, I get it.
Right. So anyway, I guess we'll jump in. Obviously, everyone listening, hopefully now you know that Cory is a member of Starset, but let's jump in and talk about how you got into music and some of your early exposure and early influences. You're a multi-instrumentalist and songwriter and, great performer. So tell us a little bit about how you got started and, some of your early exposure to music.
Yeah,
Sure.
Who are you?
In other words, who are you?
Well, so I come from a musical family first and foremost, and and especially on my dad's side, it was a huge family. He had 9 siblings.
Oh my God!
They most of my uncles played music in varying capacities. My dad was a drummer and a singer and guitarist, so that's definitely the initial exposure. But then I didn't really appreciate it young. I had like an awareness of what kind of music vaguely was. And it was just something that I thought my uncles did when they got together. I didn't know that like you can pursue this for real. So, and then I would see them at holidays and they all play guitar together. And I thought it was like mesmerizing and cool.
Was this 9 people playing guitar together? Because that sounds
No. I wish that'd be awesome. No, I mean, yeah, probably horrible.
He says awesome. I say, oh my gosh.
No. It was like 3. And they knew how to play together. So it was kind of interesting. But then nothing really resonated until I have this very distinct first memory of like becoming online and like becoming aware that music was possible. And I was in the car with my dad, where we grew up in Westlake, Ohio, and Rush's Spirit of the Radio came on. And it's like this super prog song. If you don't know it, you should listen to it. The intro is like this really flanged, like arpeggiated guitar. And it was so cool. And then it comes in with this drum fill that like still I can't dissect all the way. But I remember hearing like when this riff kicks in, I was like, I couldn't believe it. And then like the song goes through journeys where it's like really heavy. And then there's like a reggae breakdown and then, epic solo. So that sort of like lit the fire. And I started getting obsessed with like prog. And I guess I picked up the guitar and then really didn't take it seriously until I was about 13. And I had a really bad skateboarding accident and didn't walk for like a year and a half.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And then it was like the perfect time to like, bury myself in an instrument. And I was self-taught for basically everything I do. Now we kind of have resources like YouTube and stuff, but I remember like going on websites and listening to like Metallica and finding out tabs and how to dissect tabs, and then that started like the whole journey.
Encyclopedia Metallica and Psych Met. Anyone remember that one?
Yes, I do.
That's how I learned how to play guitar.
Yeah, I owe so much to that, really. And then there was like I just mentioned this the other day. There was like a 3-year window where I only listened to Metallica and like dissected the entire discography and got super into it. And then I saw like S&M, which blew my mind that like a heavy band was playing with orchestras, and that was kind of like the first I got to see this, like those bridges cross successfully, and that was really cool. And then I got into eventually much heavier and heavier music and tuning my guitar down. And then not until like recently, I mean like 8 years ago now, but I started going down the rabbit hole of synthesis and synthesizers and like burying myself in that. And that totally like was a massive paradigm shift on how I understood sound in general and shaping tones and drum sounds even. And then I got into mixing, and that like, kind of took me into like the audio engineer world, which I know Brock cares about quite a bit too. So
these guys do too. I know that you and other Cory can nerd out about that. And
God, I'm other Cory now.
Well, I mean, I guess if we're talking about the guest of the show, you're other Cory at the moment.
I'm only sitting in front of like $10,000 of keyboards, but hey, no sweat. I used to have more. But like, whatever, Siobhán, ignore me for Cory and his geekiness.
No.
We'll talk about each one of the words at length if you want to. I would be so happy to do that.
I mean,
we'll get there. Let's make sure we keep our listeners for at least like 30 minutes before we actually lose everyone.
Right.
We're about to lose Ben because we're not talking about his keyboards.
Oh man, I've been wanting to talk about the NS2000B for at least 30 episodes, and no one's mentioned it yet. So
let's go.
So what was your introduction to the synthesizer world, and how did that kind of what was that catalyst?
Definitely. Well, I was like aware of what they were, of course, and like I love the sounds, but it never like felt approachable. It's kind of intimidating, really. Like there's so much to learn, and when you look at these machines, they look like spaceships, especially cool analog synths. But I worked at this company. It was a guitar effects company called Earthquake Devices for a long time. And a lot of those people are also fellow synth nerds. So you'll find out like people who really get geeky about guitar pedals are often into the synth world as well. And they kind of like, I was circling the drain for a long time around synths, like looking from the outside. They eventually pushed me in, and I'm glad they did, because like, it opened up a million doors and like changed the whole way I think about music and sound in general. And then like, of course, it goes without saying, but I'm a definite gearhead. Like both analog and digital world. I can talk music, software, and hardware all day. So if we want to open that can, we can do that.
After 30 minutes, so we hit the YouTube algorithm, and before we lose all our listeners, then we'll.
Well, but let's fill in some of the gaps, because that was kind of a great arc of your history in music. But So talking about your family, I mean, were your parents or your uncles, were they doing music for a career? Like at what point did you join a band? Like at what point were you performing or doing this like actively beyond just a personal study?
Sure. Well, yeah, my dad did it like semi-professionally. He had a music video on MTV, which I thought was pretty cool, and playing drums in it. And I remember like these just memories, like growing up, like, being around the house. My mom
with what band?
It was called The Set, and it was like a very U2 sounding sort of band. Yeah, it was just super funny to see. But there was so much music in the house, of course, and my mom was always singing out loud, and my dad was, of course, doing the same thing. So I was just surrounded by it. So like it became an upbringing, and I never thought about pursuing it professionally ever, really. Like all the way through school and even through college, I didn't do a single music thing. It was always like a personal hobby. I guess I can kind of like fill in the gaps of when it like changed professionally. This is kind of an interesting story. Is like I went to school for medicine in Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, and it is not a musical school, to say the least. It's a very tech heavy school, which is cool. But I was like buried in like bio lab reports and fine art projects and stuff. And I always brought my guitars with me, and I would like set it up in my little dorm room and basically just be doing like sweep arpeggios forever and annoying a lot of people. And this is like 2009. This is like when YouTube started to become a thing. Like actually like a good resource. And I put up these covers with my friend and Eric, who and like this is how the Sahaj thing happened, by the way.
Okay.
So we would like upload these like covers of the songs to YouTube, one of them being a Raw song, and then
Do you call my name?
Yeah, him. So he noticed it and like reached out to us, and like we kind of started saying like we wanted to work together and do this for real. And then long story short, we got a record deal, and I said, let's pursue this. So yeah, I mean that's like I kind of took a leap of faith there, and I guess I've been doing music ever since.
Wow. Well, so elaborate on that. So what happened from there? And where were you in school? Like, did you leave school? Did you finish school?
So good question. So I guess like let me back up. Like a big part of my life story is like right in the beginning of school, I got the phone call, which is a very difficult call, of course, and it was the call that my dad had stage 4 cancer.
Oh my God.
Being the focus, like the musical center of my life, that was really difficult, and I was away from home. So he ended up passing away a little over a year after that. Obviously, like we were a very close family, just me, my mom, my dad, and my sister. So that was, enormously difficult to deal with. And at the same time, this YouTube recognition thing happened. So I was torn. I was like, I was in a really, really good school pursuing like a very lucrative career. I wanted to be a surgeon, frankly. And I was kind of lost. I didn't know what to do because you're like this great opportunity to like pursue something that's, I guess, more stable. Granted, there's like, I'd be in school till I'm in my 40s to pull this off. But like that was like, a definite sure career path. And then one that was like a big gamble. Like, why would I turn my back on school to pursue something so risky? And I talked to a lot of people about it, and I got mixed reviews. Some people were like, like pursue academia. This is important. You should do this. Do your music later. I always heard that. Like, oh, like once you can play your music when you're a doctor, then that's kind of a silly and short-sighted way to look at it. But my mom, of course, was like, gave and still does like unconditional support. And she's like, it kind of frankly said, if you don't do this, your dad's going to roll over. Which I thought was funny. So basically, I had the support from my family from the get-go, which probably is responsible for, my pursuing all of this. So I said, yeah. And I went on a really rough tour in a van, like as you do when you start, and, not sleeping, driving for 20 hours and spending way more money than you're making. And I did that for years. And then eventually, I took a more of a position at Earthquaker and like started becoming a product manager and getting in the gear world and the studio side of things and producing artists, and then didn't really consider touring. I played like a million shows in between then as one-offs and like small runs, but didn't really consider touring fully until after COVID with Starset.
Yeah. Wow. It's a crazy story.
Yeah, it's a crazy story.
Yeah. Well, it shows how like unpredictable things can be. And I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, music is not something that's easy to do alongside other things. I think if you're going to make success in it, you definitely have to kind of go all in, and especially as long as you can. But go ahead, Ben.
I like the pursuit of selfish acts because, like, being a keyboard player is completely useless for anything other than yourself and self-indulgence, mindless self-indulgence, actually. Whereas being a surgeon, you could have saved lives, you could have helped, people live better. So I think it's great that you decide just to be creative instead of helpful.
I hope you're being facetious, because
I'm being totally facetious. I think that's great. Honestly, no, I say that completely facetiously because it's one of those things where a lot of people would say, like, why wouldn't you be a surgeon? If you were so good and you could have done, like, why wouldn't you? Whereas for me, I think the fact that you actually did pursue what you wanted to, like, there's something about doing what you want on your own terms, even if it means starving in a van and spending more money than you have, than doing what everyone else thinks that you should do.
Right. That's a good point. I do think, though, arguably music's helped me more than anything. So, like, if I'm thinking of doing this, like, I want to create something that, like, gives me that same feeling I had when I was young, and, like, feel inspired to create and feel inspired to make something. So that, like, I try to foster that. And frankly, that's kind of hard to do with performing sometimes. I'm to be frank, I'm much more of like a studio hibernating, love being in the laboratory and experimenting kind of person than like going out there. I didn't want to, like, my pursuit wasn't to be like a famous rock guy. Like, I just wanted to, like, have the capacity to make music at, like, a really high level. No, that's an interesting divide, though, because once you get into the world of touring, it is a lot. I mean, there are ways that you're kind of stripped of your creativity because it becomes, in some ways, more like a day job of, like, okay, now we're going to do this thing that we created a while ago and spin it for the next 2 months, and a lot of hustling and talking to people and, like, a lot of business engagement beyond just, like, the music is almost a small part of the day in a lot of cases.
But being in Starset and not wanting to be a performer is like saying you want to be in vaudeville, but not knowing how to, flatball change.
The Starset thing, like, is only, you have to understand, like, when you're 20 years old, you're not thinking of, like, touring at, like, this level. Like, the reality is you're getting in a van with your friends and you're just very sweaty and frustrated and playing to no one, playing to the sound guy and the band before you.
Wait, when was that? Because that was like last week for me.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, well, that's the thing. But Siobhán made a good point, and I want, like, so when you tell people you're touring, they often, like, romanticize it. Like, it's all, they see the cool photos and, like, they think, like, that's all of it, and it's like, that is, like, a very short window where you're celebrating the actual music of the day. The rest of the time, especially when you're younger and, like, in an upcoming band, you're a t-shirt salesman, you're a driver, you're like, you are dealing with logistics and, like, figuring out how to get to the next place, where you're going to sleep. And you play your 30-minute set is, like, just a short window of the day, and the rest is just other types of suffering.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, that's one thing that I was fascinated to hear about, because I mean, as a string player, I was spoiled in the sense that, like, I only came around when people had enough budget to afford string players, right? But I always love hearing the stories of even in Starset, when it was just the 4 guys and, like, barely even having a stable sound guy, just driving around. And you're totally right. I mean, by the time people see you and they find out what you do and they see kind of all of the big production stuff, there's so many years before that of grinding.
Speaking of all that, can you talk about, your entrance into Starset? Because obviously we knew Siobhán for years and we were familiar with the band and we knew all the guys, and then you being the latest addition.
Sure.
Could I dovetail on that question before you go into it? Because I want you to know that I told Siobhán before you existed that I wanted this position, but I didn't know what Dustin needed. Because the thing is, it's not about playing keyboards, because Ron can fix a bus. Ron can speak other languages. So, like, if you play bass, that's like the 17th thing on his list. So I kept trying. I cut my hair this way. I did all kinds of things to try to attract Dustin with my keyboard dances, but nothing was it. So I'm actually sort of curious as well, like, what other talents did you bring to the table besides sweep picking? That was essential.
That wasn't my question,
player.
but thanks for dovetailing on that.
The dovetailing meant convoluting and turning it into his own question.
You cut your hair to peacock form. Well, I'm a bald white guy, so I must have gotten pretty good playing to do that. So, okay. Well, I guess, like, first and foremost, we're all, most of us are from Ohio. Most of the band's from Columbus. I'm from Cleveland. So I'm about, like, 2.5 hours north by the lake. And so I guess like we have the Ohio thing, which is very important. But we've known each other for a long time. So Dustin and I used to tour together, both in different bands respectively growing up. So that band, that's how also, we know Sahaj and like Dustin and I because of this like interaction. So yeah, we were toured together in separate bands for a while and then stayed in touch over the years and collaborated on a few things in different ways. And then COVID happened. And obviously nothing musical was going on. And when music started to reemerge again, at least the possibility of touring again, this is when the record Horizons was about to come out. And I remember I was in British Columbia on a hike and I got a call from Dustin. And when he calls you, there's a reason. He typically wants something. So he basically said, yeah, like, this new record Horizons coming out. And I think The Breach had just been released, the music video for that, which I love that song. By the way, I think it's my favorite song off the record, and it's a very polarizing track. But I remember getting the call, and he said, we want to take Horizons on the road and do have a lot more like a deliberate effort to make the band more live. And he knows I play a lot of guitars and synths, and like he's seen me do this over the years, like posting on Instagram and videos and YouTube and stuff like that. So he knew like what my playing was, and he said, we really want to make this band a lot more live and engaging. And you're first on the list if you want to do it. So the idea was like we would do like one tour as a trial and see how we meshed and see how it worked and how I fit in. And I hung up that phone call and I said, okay, I guess I'll change my whole life now. So I got off of that trip, went home, and basically started like deconstructing the 4 records. So yeah, like all the transmission stuff, which I've been familiar with for a while, then Vessels Divisions, and then the new record Horizons, which had not been released yet. So I started thinking about like how I would approach these songs, and then like basically doing all the sound design to recreate the album sounds live and programming all these patches it was a tour last fall. So it was like, when was that? It was kind of like, basically the end of October through.
Yeah, it was around, fall, winter time.
And the idea was like, let's give it for this tour for a trial run and see how it goes. And I think by like the second or third show in, Dustin and Ron were like, you're in, you're full time. This is like, it's not negotiable. Well, of course they asked me, but like, they were pretty adamant about it. So like, it was like it felt really good right away. And I think I meshed well with everyone, especially Z and Siobhán, because I knew Adam and Brock for a little bit before this, but I really got along with Z and Siobhán, which has been funny because we all make really terrible jokes. So now I guess like, so that's kind of how it started, and it's been over a year now, just over a year. So it's been awesome.
Yeah. Let me ask you, when Dustin called you, what sort of path were you on at that point? Because you mentioned, you're going to change your whole life.
He was on a hiking path.
Well, besides the hiking path, of course, like what was going on in your mind of like your future for the next few years when he called you?
Well, I've always had like been basically saving and like figuring out what I wanted to do to build a studio, like a proper one, and not like have a converted bedroom, which has always been the case, right? Like how can I like re-outfit this place and treat it so it's like an acceptable listening environment. So anyways, like, so that was like a goal that I'm like still actually finishing now, which is great. But at the time I had been like, most of my time has been managing this pedal company, which is awesome, but it started to grind, and it's not always creative. There are creative moments, but a lot of the time you're just like running a company and you're having to deal with like 55 different personalities. So I was starting to look at like other things I wanted to pursue that would be more creatively fulfilling. And looking like post-COVID, I knew music would like reemerge in a really cool way, but I didn't think I'd be performing again, like at least in this rock band. I do a lot of like, I'm a big jazz nerd, so I love playing like fusion and stuff with friends and like producing artists. So that was kind of like my initial intention, was like, how can I do this more at home and like be more in control of my free time instead of like this like day job. So that was like my initial intention, and this kind of like fell into place at a really cool time where now I'm much more in control of my time and have that afforded to me to, pursue things creatively. So yeah, that's sort of like it really was very auspicious timing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's amazing.
Because I would have made a big change either way. Like by the end of the year, I would have done, something different. So this is really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not really sure what you're doing live, but I have to say that I've seen Starset many a time. And the last time that we came and we saw you for the first time, you guys sounded ridiculous. Like it sounded almost fake to me. Your sound guy, who's a friend of one of my buddies who runs a studio, sounded in like his front of house was so ridiculous in the first place. But then the performance was amazing. And then your audition, I mean, look, Starset screams for sound design. Like, well, of course there's sound design. Like press a button, a keyboard, and it goes perfectly along with all the lighting and all of that. So it's funny that you say that you like to be in a studio, but it's like, hey, now you're on Broadway, dude.
Yeah, and I really commit. Don't get me wrong. Like when I'm at home, I'm like strapping on the guitar and like cranking the PA and opening it up and like doing flips in my room. So I try to like rein it in a little bit. Like I have that like, you know, arena fantasy, which is really cool. But people like really comment on it. Like when I go live, I'm really jumping around, and I'm on this small riser, like a 6x6 riser. And I think I use every square inch of that thing.
Absolutely. Because when we're doing the live show, I'm on your side of the stage. And every time I look over, I'm like, what is going on over there?
I really. And
but it really is. No, go ahead.
I'm juggling a lot and like flipping around and like facing different ways and tossing on a guitar. And I don't know. It's
a high. I was going to comment. I mean, you have a high pressure position for sure, because it is way more than just like we need a synth player or something. It's like, you had to program everything and integrate it so that you can trigger the tracks in a way that triggers everything else, and like flipping instruments and changing patches. And I mean, as someone that went to music school and got a master's, I'm still working on figuring out sound design with synthesizers and like how to use Ableton and how to like connect a MIDI controller.
How many patches do you go through in a set, in a show?
It's like upwards of 85 now or so. Yeah.
That sounds like.
And then
blast.
Of course you have your guitar. Yeah. When you're doing any of the guitar parts, you have your pedals and, you know, all sorts of other stuff that you're dealing with on that front. So it's a lot of choreography.
That's another thing. Yeah, like
choreography.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, I think that was the hardest part at first. It's not so much the playing. No offense. It's kind of we're playing rock songs. There's fun. There's like difficult moments, but a lot of it was like figuring out the jumps I need to make in the choreography of like, I need to play this part and then like the space between the next downbeat, flip to the Moog and then do something and then like, or get my guitar on. So that was like the hardest part, to get those sort of things fluid and automating what I can. But then like trying to avoid tap dancing on like, you know, pedals and stuff like that. That's always the challenge. And then like, you know, like that's just the playing. When you have strobe lights in your face and your ears are falling out and you're like you lasers are shining everywhere, that was also like another layer of complexity that's like, oh god, like, it's not just doing it like in like a sterile environment. You're doing it live and there's fog everywhere and things are, you can't hear yourself, like, so, you know, every day is different.
What was the last live performance situation you had before touring with Starset?
Well, it was like through COVID, so there wasn't much going on in terms of.
But like, I mean, just in general, like, what was the last time you were on a stage, like
playing jazz tunes with like fusion tunes with, you know, some friends and like other musicians, and
so a big juxtaposition of, you know, that to.
Yeah, I haven't done like rock touring in a few years, like at least 5 years before this. So yeah, I mean, this is the coolest thing. I'm a big cinematic rock fan and sci-fi nerd, so like this is. I was saying like last night, this is like has the three pillars I love, which is like really heavy moments in rock music, orchestral music, and then electronic elements. So having like that trifecta is really important. This band is like the perfect playground to explore that world.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's plenty going on, but
well, I mean, I have to say it is pretty amazing, because it's one of those things, and I've seen you with the acoustic performances, but also the big arena stuff, that it is a really great integration of like strings and stuff, where like most people are using patches or whatever, but meanwhile there's two like unbelievable Jedi level players actually playing them. And then the thing is like, yeah, you could be replaced completely by an iPod, but it's like, no, Dustin, he wouldn't have that. He wants the monkeys dancing. So he's going to get a guy who knows how to program DMX 512 protocol into Ableton with all the MIDI stuff, and then get it all sunk up with redundant laptops and the whole nine, because you don't want that to happen where you lose your laptops and you can't possibly play the show. So they're like, let's get Cory. Let's get this guy. He can play fusion. Of course he could play play rock keyboards. And then here you are. It's amazing. I mean, honestly, you sounded so good live. But to think that you play like fusion with your last band, that makes me happy because it's like, of course you did.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of lost laptops.
Yes, I saw the PTSD like arising.
This was a quick anecdote. It was the last show of the big arena tour we did with Breaking Benjamin earlier this year. And it was that show and before it, and I was rehearsing because we went straight into a headline tour. So I was kind of like, I brought my laptop and my keyboard onto the bus to basically get ready for the big tour. We went straight into it. Well, about 2 or 3 hours before the big finale show, I was in the back lounge of our bus and I had a water bottle and I nicked the water bottle on the edge of the table and it fell onto my keyboard, went on my computer typing keyboard, went into the fans and fried the entire motherboard. This is the show computer. It's what I use everything with. So I'm panicking and I'm like, well, I'm trying to dry it off and rip off the back. And I'm like taking out the RAM and I'm blowing into all the peripherals, trying to air dry this the best I could. It's totally fried. It's still useless. To this day, it's a brick. So I ran to Siobhán and was like, please, can I try to use your laptop? And she's like, of course. So I'm trying to download these patches and reinstall these instruments and get this the last show file backup I had, which was there, but it takes, these are tens of gigabytes of sounds and patches and programming to even get it running. And I made do, but it was very rough. And ever since, so then I went to go buy a new MacBook. So I searched everywhere. And this is the time when the chip shortage was really bad and you couldn't go to new Apple MacBook anywhere. So I had to order one and it took months and yeah, it really sucked. So I know what it's like to lose a laptop before your big finale arena show. That does suck.
Well, I'm curious about it because have you guys seen the headlines about this band Falling in Reverse that I had never even heard of before, but they had to pull out of Aftershock or something because their laptop got stolen or something and they didn't have a backup laptop. So they're like, yeah, man, sorry. Not having a laptop's like not having an engine in your car. And everyone was giving them the hardest time because they're like, what? And then they're like, well, but Queen used backing tracks for Bohemian Rhapsody. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about any of this. How do you feel about it, Cory?
Well, I mean, the thing is, fortunately, we're pretty careful about redundancies. Now I have everything was backed up to the cloud. It just a matter of using it. But now that we actually have our computers, I have this one, I have a backup show computer here, and then the main stage computer. So now we have 3 layers of things that I can use and we have to. So, and you have to be careful about that. And we make changes every day. I know Dustin is very particular about his effects and every room's different. So he's not afraid to edit the show file for his, vocal chains and sends and verbs and stuff. So we're constantly turning over the file and updating it. But if they had to cancel a massive festival show for that, that's kind of...
Well, that's why I think it's funny because it's just okay, I get that you need to use your laptop. Avicii needed to use his laptop too. All right, fair. But you got to think for how much those dudes are getting paid. Get a redundant laptop. Figure it out, bro. Really? Are you this lost?
Yeah.
They're not a new band either. So I'm I wonder how they got this far. We are a very tech heavy band with a lot of points of failure and variables. So we know what it's like when things break and we try to protect ourselves against it so much. So the computer's number one. If that's the brain of the show, you got to be on top of that one. Yeah, maybe there's more to it that we don't know, but I don't know. That seems really silly for them to cancel the whole thing.
I think I also recently saw a friend of our show, Doc Coyle, Bad Wolves had their gear go down or something happened with their tracks and they still played the show minus tracks. And they said it was the first time that they've had to do it and they killed it. So it can be done if you got to adapt and make it happen. But it's funny that we're reaching a point in music now where that can be the reason for canceling a show, and potentially disappointing thousands of fans. It's I forgot to charge my laptop, it went down.
Oh, so the thing about us is we are controlling so much with that laptop. I have my own that's separate, that's not the show computer, just from my own audio stuff and queuing the actual show. But then it goes to the main show computer, and that's doing all of our video walls and synchronizing a lot of lights and stuff. So if it goes down, I mean, we could do it. I mean,
but here's the thing: you guys are on an acoustic tour right now. You guys can play the song. You guys can play the songs without a video wall. It's been proven.
I hear nothing about music, and don't get me wrong, I love the production, and I'm a glutton for the lasers, and in fact, I think Dustin's brilliant for creating like this incredibly immersive experience, and it's like where music's going as an immersive thing. But as far as music's concerned, you guys can still go on stage, plug your keyboard into a PA speaker, and still play, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, we can get through the set for sure. Like the difficult thing about for me specifically, which is tough, is because I'm like doing 85 plus patches in over the course of our headline set. My stuff's automated. Like I'm not changing the patches manually because I'm like playing the parts. So if I go down, that means I don't get to actually like change my patch. So I got to like surf on something on one sound, which can be done. I do it on the Moog a lot, but that's usually the default. We've
heard the same story from Brock and his Kemper.
Right, the guitarist, yeah.
Exactly. And like, so, hey, the sounds aren't switching. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Like, that's sort of the part about tech that you really need to work is like, at least.
Can I tell you what I did? So I just joined a band for the first time playing keyboards. I've been playing piano all my life, but I'm terrified of keyboards. So what I did is I only played organ and piano. And I'm going to get 2 full-size 88 keys. One's going to be organ all the time, and one's going to be piano all the time. And then I might have a third one that has both organ and piano with like the 5 different choices, so that if something goes wrong, I can just go over to this keyboard over here and just press
just wait and see what your bandmates say when it's time to go on tour. It was already a fight getting one 88 key keyboard on a bus.
Well, listen, I'll have to fight with Shannon Larkin to not bring 288 keyboards and a Moog because he doesn't live in reality. He's like, we got to play like Spinal Tap. He's gonna be like, how are you gonna play the harpsichord part if you don't have a harpsichord? Which is why I love Shannon.
That's true.
I feel like it is good to have always an 88 key piano available. You could use it for anything.
Well, that's what's great about violin, I'll say, is like, everybody's getting crazy about we're going to change the tuning. Oh, I need this capo and whatever. I mean, I need the Kemper to do this. And for me, it's just like, all right, there's a little bit of work to be done in my head or like notation, but then it can be adapted.
I have a question for you, Siobhán. But what happens if you're on the edge of the table and I take my water and I spill it into your violin and knock over your $50,000 violin? Do you just go get a redundant one at Best Buy and download it from the cloud?
No, but that's something I think about a lot because I mean, most of the time I'm touring with just the one violin. I mean, there's especially the cello. There's not space for 2 cellos, but that could happen. Like, I mean, the only thing we can really do is have backup strings or get the bow re-haired right before we leave, but if something were to happen, it could be bad. If
something were to happen, then Cory's going to add an 86 patch.
I'll play fake violin to one that's been
I was going to say, Dustin
water.
will literally be like, can you go like this through the whole show? Like, no one will know. You'll know.
Yeah.
For while we're on the topic of performances and everything, why don't you guys talk a little bit about the tour that you're currently on? Just started, so right? How many shows have you done?
We this is our second day off. I think we've done 9 or 10 shows so far over the period of like 10 days.
So how's it going?
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it because first of all, compared to like the live demonstration, the full deal, I have one instrument. And I no patch changes, and I'm sitting down. This is great. So this is like for me, way less pressure, barely break a sweat. But it's cool to like. My favorite part is playing piano against live strings. I love that. That's like been my favorite thing and like a dream for a long time. So that's super enjoyable.
Me too.
It is.
I love that.
The best. And like every day is different. Like some days we can hear ourselves better than others, but I like doing it, and it's cool because as opposed to like the big like full live demonstration we're on tour and there's bigger, like much bigger audiences, we don't have the same time afforded to us to actually like chat with people and have an actual conversation instead of just signing something and sending them on their way. So they're very intimate, they're very close, and then we get to have some downtime, and it just feels like a lot less pressure. So it feels more like an informal hang than this big massive immersive performance.
Yeah, and I think it really tightens us up as a band too, because I mean, we're all playing acoustic instruments. There's minimal effects, and obviously we have the sound guy, but you really have to be careful about everything, your articulation and how tight we are together, and it's just a different acoustic environment. So for me, it's great. I mean, violin and cello were made for acoustic spaces, right? It's always more natural to me to play as close to an acoustic setting as possible, because once you get in-ears and you change the sonic environment, things change. It changes the way you play and what you react to. So I think for us, I mean, just as a band, it's great.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, definitely feel like we're working on dynamics and stuff now, and like we're really tightening up the sorts of transitions and like how we bloom into choruses or bridges, and that's something that we don't get to do on the full Electric tour very much. Also, the sonics are way different, but we're totally naked up there and very vulnerable, so it's cool to like work on the songs. So, like when we do our sound checks, we're
it's like a rehearsal.
Yeah, like we're rehearsing and like trying to reimagine some things, or like let's try to do this, the verse this way, or like try to do the bridge or steer it this way, and that's super fun.
Yeah, no, it's been great. And we've like each time, like every day we're working on something new. I mean, we just added a couple new songs that are starting to make their light, in front of people, some of the new Horizon songs. But yeah, it's been great.
Well, I love it. Now on these tours, you said you're talking to all these people, and I've been to some of these shows, and the people that are into Starset are in to Starset. And Cory, you're new to this universe, and I use that term very literal. What's it like to talk to all the Starset fans, and how have you been received? And is there a backstory that Dustin has given you that has allowed for you to be at these demonstrations?
No. I mean, I've been received really well. Actually, everyone's been like kind of welcoming, and no one's like, screw the keyboard or something like that. Like nobody. All right, like I'm not getting that at all. Everyone's been really kind and welcoming. But yeah, I mean, like the fans that are coming out are definitely the super fans, which is sweet. And it's interesting to like get to chat with them a bit, but they really love the band. It's really like, you can tell I've had like the same feelings towards bands growing up, but like, it's kind of our turn to like, play that role for them. And like, they really have like found meaning in a lot of the music. And like, some people are like getting our names like tattooed on them and our signatures and stuff. So it's very like powerful.
Yeah. No, I don't know if you talked to this guy yesterday, but at the last acoustic tour, he had all of us after like 4 beers try and draw the star logo. And I remember being horrified because he's like, I'm going to get this tattooed on my arm. I'm like, are you sure this is a good time to have us freehand draw this? And I saw it. And I mean, it actually turned out pretty good, but it was definitely not symmetrical. And he went with it. And, it was awesome. Like, just the level of enthusiasm is crazy.
I saw this one guy who had like a bunch of leftovers, and he had the styrofoam thing, and he went up to all of you. He was like, hey, can you sign this styrofoam like leftovers from my burger? And oh, wait a minute, that was Cory.
Oh yeah.
So this was from the last acoustic tour. That might be the most unique piece, and it's even framed.
Oh my God, you framed it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
It's a box frame of a box.
The leftovers in there are really starting to smell bad, but it's worth it. It's great.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Cory and I are like similar in the sense that we're such foodies. Like everybody, when we have a day off, it's like, let's go to like the most generic chain restaurant, like Applebee's or Chili's, and everyone's so excited to like DoorDash something you could get anywhere. And then we're like, what is going on here? There are a million places to go eat. So we're always like commiserating with each other on the like poor choice of food.
I can't stress enough how much this is accurate. The poor choices are blowing my mind. Like, we're eating mostly garbage all the time to survive on tour. Don't get me wrong, but like on our days off, when we have the opportunity, the last thing I want is mac and cheese. I want to get sushi or like good pho. Also, I try to find this like I just heard about this amazing like the best dumplings in Salt Lake, and I was ready, and they're closed, so I can't do it.
Oh, wow.
We'll find something though, but
yeah, we'll find something afterwards. Yeah, so we're in Salt Lake City today. So
all I got in Salt Lake City was a nosebleed because the air is so thin there.
Yeah, I don't know what elevation. I mean, we're surrounded by mountains, but within the city, it's kind of flat. So I don't actually know what the elevation is here.
We're like at 4,700 feet, but when we were in Colorado, we were 2,500 feet higher. I think. Yeah, I don't know. I like the Rockies. I feel it also like we were left out with the weather, so it's kind of really nice here right now. But
yeah,
I don't
touring in the summer.
Oh my God, yes. We had the hottest summer ever. Did you talk to them about like people passing out at our shows and like we had ambulances there? And
oh yeah, that was on
nice.
the live shows. There was one venue we played that was in Tennessee somewhere. It wasn't Nashville. It was maybe I don't remember, Knoxville, but their AC was broken, and it was in the middle of the summer. It was probably 100 degrees outside, and there were people actually like passing out. And this was like a routine problem. They were like proud of the fact that people were like experiencing medical problems from heat stroke. And I'm like, this is really dangerous and not a good idea. It was really hard to play that show.
That sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Right. I know. Who knows what happened after that? But the acoustic tour has been great, and yeah, I mean, we're less than 2 weeks in, so. We're heading west right now, and we'll head back after that.
So can you tell people what the experience is like as far as like, okay, because I mean, obviously going and seeing you with Breaking Benjamin and Seether, thousands of people, very different experience than going and seeing you, let's say, at Wally's in Hampton Beach. What's someone going to see if they go and see you guys on this super fan kind of experience?
Ooh, Siobhán, answer that one.
I mean, it's definitely more up close. It's more, as Dustin likes to say, it's kind of behind the fourth wall. It's like when you go see the live demonstration, it's, we're eclipsed by costume and a lot of amplification and production and stuff. And I mean, this is really like, ask any question and we'll answer it. And, the songs are about as raw as they can get. Like, it's very, very vulnerable in a lot of ways. And, of course, this whole second half of the event is just talking and hanging out and getting to know people and having them ask you any and every question. So it's like a totally different access point. It's I think people enjoy it equally. I mean, almost everyone that I've talked to say that they like both the main demonstrations as well as these, just for different reasons.
Yeah, I've heard that too. People are like really, really do value this, which is cool. But yeah, I agree. It's the same thing. Like, this is like the coolest opportunity where you can actually like sit with us and hang out and you hug band members. We have like this wheel. We like, that's kind of fun. Like we like do raffles and stuff like throughout the set, and we call ticket numbers, and you can come up and spin the wheel. And the wheel has like, varying prizes or not so fun prizes. And like, or you can like ask a question, you win tickets to the next show. You can hug a band member, get selfie with Ernie, and do all this fun stuff. So yeah, it's like Siobhán said, it's the perfect way to actually get to hang and meet us, and not in the chaos of a full demonstration, and get to like see us as the naked humans we are.
Yeah, exactly.
When you are putting this set together, the acoustic set, you're taking all these layers of production and boiling them down into a piano. What's your process for that?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I
had a lot of fun, like, kind of doing some of the piano arrangements, especially for the Horizon songs. They're really, really well arranged, just the nature of their production. So it was fun to kind of like deconstruct choruses and make little things. Like Carnivore is an example where there's like a pretty, like very prominent synth line in like the pre-chorus. And I adapted that to piano. And I know like Siobhán kind of does a unison with me on that. And that's been really fun. I think it's one of the cool parts, like where piano stuff's not written. For like example, like this Bridge of Otherworldly, there was really nothing there. So we got to basically sit down and kind of like construct ways that we wanted to tackle it. So it depends on the song. Some of them kind of lend themselves to natural like acoustic arrangement, like Halo is like a ballady type song. So there wasn't much different than the original song, and like It Has Begun. But for some of the heavier stuff, it's been fun to kind of like, totally approach it differently. And I just love kind of like writing piano parts and kind of like building interesting chords. And actually, this is the thing I was talking to Z about, which is it's very different. Like to look at these songs, like if it was like a solo piano piece, it'd be much busier and much more colorful chords and stuff. But when you have to play against a guitar, a bass, and then two strings that are always doing different things, you have to serve like an accompaniment role, which is much different than like the solo, piano role. So it has to like serve the song, of course. It can't be like this big flourishing thing. And you have to obviously like serve the lead vocal as well. So, it's different per song, but it's super fun to kind of think about this. And we're talking about like the songs we want to do next and how we can like reimagine them and tailor them to the acoustic world. So
well, and on top of that, I mean, there's also acoustic, like sanctioned acoustic versions that exist of a lot of these songs. But what's cool, I mean, at least for anyone that's considering coming to the shows, is we don't do like the straight acoustic version or the straight live version. Like a lot of them are fusions of both, So like Cory will take elements from, the acoustic version of Ricochet and, pin it against us doing stuff that we actually do in the live show. And it's like, it's kind of a cool fusion of like bringing elements from both compositions and adding stuff and you know, adding pauses or like different compositional changes that like
can I ask you
work
something
really well. Yeah.
What's it like to be in a band where you could play a song, people recognize that song, and then you can play 35 different iterations and people will recognize that those are different iterations of another song?
I mean, I think it's awesome. And I think it just proves that they're really good songs. I mean, that's what's amazing about Dustin. He's like such a brilliant songwriter. And like Cory said, that, you know, the compositions themselves are just so easy to adapt to acoustic settings because there's so much counterpoint, you know, like it does have that underlying symphonic element of like, there's
you know,
voices
Dustin's
moving.
sitting there, he's like sitting there going, okay, we put the pandas in the cage. You have Z over here, who she certainly has that Slavic anger, and she's going to come out with the ferocious arpeggios. And, well, Siobhán's a little bit more demure, but she'll figure it out. And then, well, we threw Cory into the cage. Ron, we know, is going to be fixing the bus in the back. It's like...
Yeah, that's so funny. He actually gives us like a ton of freedom to do that. Like he never, you know, micromanaged any of those.
Of course he does. He put a bunch of geniuses together. Why would Dustin, the singer, tell you what to do when he has Siobhán, who went to university, and like Z, who was like doing marketing and other stuff, and she comes to this country and they're like, you can do it. She's like, I can, and now she plays in front of tens of thousands of people. Like, it's insane. Of course you guys are great. Like, that's the greatest thing, is that Dustin is the greatest delegator of all time. He finds people who are so like, you're the talent of your band. Like, nevertheless, Adam, like the greatest marketing, crazy, like always scheming, make them ask questions, you know, drum abusing guy. Like, your whole band is a super group, and you don't even have to play music. That's the genius of Dustin.
That's so funny way to put it. And I think, yeah, there's probably a lot of truth to that. Like, I know, for example, like we're not afraid to change keys on the fly if like it's serving like the vocals or something like that in some way. And I get stressed out in piano. I'm not that comfortable to just switch a half step. Like all my chord shapes are now different on the fly. I've never seen anyone do it faster than Siobhán. She's like, oh, we'll just do it a half step down, or we'll do it like 2 steps up.
Because transposing is just going...
No, it's different. There's open.
It's different. It's different. But I'll say though that I mean, studying piano helped a lot, because I know that like I have string player friends that really don't like that, and I guess I just remember growing up taking piano lessons.
Who likes that?
Well, I like a challenge. I mean, I think it's fun when like it's like I've learned it in one key and it's like, oh, okay, you have to do this. It's almost like an ear training exercise. Yeah. You have to think of like intervals instead of like notes.
Yeah.
You know, but I learned a lot of that from piano. I mean, I would do competitions growing up where part of the test was you'd have to perform your piece, and then you'd also be given something on the spot where you have to sight read it, like 4 voices, and then you have to transpose it to a key that they'll just call out.
We learned this with you because Cory, she flew across the country for Lost Symphony, our band, and we had. She's like, "Do you have any music for any of this?" And when we even showed her the music, she's like, "This can't possibly work. This isn't even for a violin. This is like the cello."
Yeah, we printed the MIDI that was horribly programmed.
So we tell Siobhán to go in, and we'd be like, layer number 1, and then she just first take it. Layer number 2, she would just first take it. But if you leave her to her own devices where she has to figure out all those layers, she'll freak out. She'll send you like, here's 16 different things that you could possibly do. See if you can comp them together.
I saw this in real time. We were in Florida recording the strings for Waiting on the Skies to Change, the single we did with Ben. And none of the string parts are really written. There was like loose ideas, but then he had like turned Z and Siobhán to just riff out ideas and like, what do you want to do in the verses? What do you want to do in the choruses? And they just like idea after idea after idea for, I was like 6 hours at least of like you guys burning through the track. And then basically like they picked and choose and like comped it as needed, and they could layer it no problem. But it was cool to see like just on the fly writing those string parts, which made it to the final version. Like they're still there, which is really cool.
Yeah. That was really cool. That was a cool thing. And poor Cory was like sitting in a chair the whole night because, you know, of course, when it comes to recording strings, and it was a remote setup, we had this like house in Pensacola, right? And, you know, it took however many hours to just set up the different microphones and figure out like, you know, the challenges of how to turn 2 string players into a symphonic sound. You can't stand in the same place. We had to like rotate different positions and, you know, different mic placements. And so that was a bulk of the work too. Yeah.
That song is doing pretty well. I would say.
Yeah, it is. I think Dustin was saying it's almost top 10 on radio. I haven't.
Can you guys talk a little bit more about that? Like the process of kind of coming up with that, you know, what you guys contributed and everything, and what you were expecting going into it, maybe?
Yeah, so I mean, on my end, well, so the song existed as a downplay song from many years ago, and obviously the idea came up to do a collaboration with Ben, and a lot of people actually are asking this on tour when we do the questions, you know, how did that happen? Yeah, a lot of the recording actually happened on the road. We had Joe Rickard was out helping produce and, you know, record everybody, and yeah, just doing like sessions in and out every day. I don't know the exact schedule they were on, but Dustin had suggested, you know, and we hadn't recorded strings before on any of the albums. 2 of them were out before I even joined the band. So I was super excited. I'm like, yeah, I would love to throw in some ideas. And basically it was like, oh yeah, here's the song, here's a couple ideas, and let's just do this day. We're going to go to this house. Joe's got his remote set up, and, you know, just basically come to the table with some ideas. And Z and I kind of got together and played out some ideas that we had, and just kind of went through that whole day, like through the song multiple times, going back and forth, getting ideas from Dustin. Cory was there, Joe was there, and just we kind of hashed out the arrangement as we went, like throughout that day. It was all in one day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, the songs, first off, congratulations, because a lot of people don't realize is that even though you're in the band, it's one thing to be in the band and playing the songs live, but it's another thing to be on the recordings and actually playing the song that you hear on the radio. So I think I remember like there was a cover of Kashmir, which is an amazing cover. It sounds so damn good. But like, I think you were like, it was your birthday or something, and you're on like the Jumbotron in like New York City, and everyone's like, oh my God, I heard the new song. It's so good. And it has strings in it. It's just not you. So it's like, you know, you're the face of the band. You're an incredibly accomplished musician. You play it live. You kill it live. You represent it really well. But it's another thing to be like forever in the zeros and ones on that CD, you know, that people listen to over and over, you know. And
no, absolutely.
It's great.
No, it's awesome. And I was so grateful that we were able to do it, and that it actually ended up, you know, because my expectation going in was like, okay, we'll have some ideas, but maybe they won't like the sound, because it's hard to take what is a symphonic cinematic sound and boil it down to 2 people recording in a room and somehow make that sound huge, you know? So I completely understand
Cory.
the challenges. Yeah, the challenges that come with that, you know, and just having 2 parts, you know, it's one thing when you've got like 5 or 6 different sections and people are either counterpoint, like classical music is what makes things sound massive, you know. But what's cool, of course, with technology is we can record an idea for a verse, and then our second idea from the verse can go under that, and suddenly it sounds twice as big, you know.
Does Dustin ever come in and motivate you and just go like Mariko could do that? Because she's so good. She's so good.
Yeah, she's awesome. No, but I'll say he was like
so
incredibly
good.
supportive. I mean, I think he really enjoyed everything. But he's like, you know, he's amazingly specific with when he likes something or doesn't like something. And I think it helped that we, at least for me and him, I think I agreed every time when he didn't like something, or when I didn't like something, he was like, yeah, I didn't really like that either. Let's try another version. So, you know, I think it was good to have been in the band for a period of time and know what it feels like to play the parts that make Starset, and then go in and work on a Starset song knowing what the aesthetic is and like feeling it in your fingers. Like, these are the rhythms that work. This is the type of voicing that works. And this is how the violin and the cello interact in all these other songs, you know? So you're informed by that experience. So I think it was a good time to come in and do it.
And it's really cool to hear your actual vibrato in the song. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you hear it a little bit.
So it's not one of those things where Dustin's sitting there going, can you imitate the MIDI that this producer did in Tennessee?
No, he was surprisingly hands off. Like, I mean, you know, always gives his input and was there, like, engaged the whole time. But you
realize how big of a step this is, right? Like, that he's letting you do this. He's doing a trust fall into you guys, which is him relinquishing control doesn't seem like a very Dustin thing to do, but I'm impressed.
Yeah, I won't speak for him, but I don't know if Cory has anything to add. But
he assembled a team. You're
the dream team.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the genius, you know, is like knowing what you want so specifically and being patient enough to find the people and trust the process that, you know, your vision is going to come to life. And that's what he's really good at.
I think Adam's Dennis Rodman.
That's a sports thing. I don't understand what you mean.
Yeah, definitely
I'm
over my
not a
head,
sports guy at all, but there was the Dream Team in the 80s and 90s, and everyone knows it. That's like that knows anything about sports, which I know very little. But Dennis Rodman had his hair all crazy colors, and he was insane like Adam. So that's
see, when I think of the Dream Team, I think of the lawyers that defended O.J. Simpson. Didn't he have the Dream Team?
It was named after like Michael Jordan.
I don't know
and
what
Magic
came first,
Johnson.
but yeah, sports not my thing either.
No,
right, well,
I love that about you.
Once again, falling off the rails at the perfect time to end part one. Thank you, Ben.
Subscribe.
So yeah, anyway, Cory, thank you so much. We'll continue in part two and hopefully get into some more nerdy stuff. We can talk about gear.
Where can we hear some of
audio.
your stuff? How can we find you, Cory? Can you please plug all Cory things?
Oh God, I mean, I dump a bunch of dumb playing clips on my Instagram all the time. That's probably the thing. I don't have like an official channel that I'm pumping out this stuff.
Well, what's your Instagram? Tell everyone your user name, handle.
CORYJUBA. That's it.
Perfect. Your
I
name
don't know
wasn't
if I'm following
taken.
you, but I will right now.
All right, so everyone follow Cory. Come see us on tour if you haven't yet. There's still tickets for the acoustic events. And yeah, we'll see you in part two. Thank you so much for joining our crazy crew here on 2020. Like and subscribe at 2020-d.com.
Brock, in the studio, what's your most combative experience when working on a project?
Probably with me.
Meow.
Man, I don't know. Probably working with Siobhán.
Yeah.
Did she ever go like, you're playing in the wrong mode? You should have listened to your first teacher that first lesson. It's in the wrong mode.
I mean, in that case, and like people yell, like, so I'll like be in here like jamming, like doing whatever to whatever Spotify song I have playing. And I'll hear her yell across the house, that was the wrong note. I'm like, fuck you, man. Like,